what one really is simply a non-existent, one doesn't exist. One might have an experience of nihility. And actually a deep, visceral experience of nihility can be dangerous if one is not critically prepared, if one has not learned that anything you experience has to be relational in order for you to experience it. And one of the things that is non-relational in the universe is nihility, by definition, right? One thing you can never relate to is nothingness, by definition, because it's not there. So you can't touch it, you can't find it, you can't contact it, you won't enter it, it will not impinge on any something, because it's not there. So it's sort of at the other end of absolute, is nothingness. Absolute something cannot be contacted, or it's no longer absolute. And nothingness cannot be there, because it's not there. Right? So, however, if you're critically prepared, which I think Jack was in that thing where he was able to go into this thing that he feared as a real nothingness, a black hole in his stomach. He was prepared but he doesn't tell you about having been prepared by any particular critical teaching or the wisdom doctrine or something, and maybe was not conveyed to him in that way, by his teacher. But I'm sure we could piece it together if we went back into his full narrative. The point is, when he was afraid of it, he was reifying it, because it's something he saw, as if it were a thing in itself. Like, this is really Emily Dickinson's book. This is really my nose. This is really my idea. This is really my me. You see, we're all like that. So then when I have a big empty feeling in my stomach, that's really my emptiness. That's a real emptiness. If I fall into that, I'm going to be lost forever. It's like I've fallen into a black hole. But futile to evade it, it just keeps growing. So then turning instead and relating to it. And subliminally knowing that if you can relate to it, then it's not nothing. You cannot be lost in it. Because there's no in nothing. It's not a space, then you discover it's not nothing, it's space. And space is not nothing, it's the openness for something. It's the best analogy always for shri, sunyata. The verb shri, by the way, relates to the Anglo-Saxon swell, like to swell up. S-W, S-V, shun, S-U, S-H-U. Swollen. So, in fact, there's a wonderful phrase, my favorite phrase in Buddhism is that shunyata, voidness, is the womb of compassion. So, rather than an ultimate sort of frozen black hole, what voidness really is a membrane, an infinite membrane that contains space-time membrane. It contains all relationalities, none of which are things in themselves, and therefore all of them are fully dedicated to their relationality with all other things. And therefore, compassion becomes the relative absolute, meaning feeling others' feelings, interconnection of feelings, and therefore empathy for others, therefore compassion. But that's a little digression too. So where we were, now, the objection arises, I think is where I was, that this is all just an intellectual game. Oh yeah, no nose, okay, we can do noselessness, we can do pointlessness, we can do nothinglessness, we can do somethinglessness, we can do voidness and voidness, namely voidnesslessness, egolessness, selflessness, we can do all that, it's a kind of intellectual game, but viscerally I still feel like I'm the real thing here. When I freak out, when somebody accuses me, when somebody does something to me. So what as good as I've done? That's an ancient objection. The answer to that objection, and therefore the reason for our analytic work, is it's like a targeting mechanism. If you dive into the instincts, where you have this deep instinct of your own separateness from the universe. From the Buddhist perspective, from your infinite biological experience of living in a realm of dog eat dog, animal eating animal. And you need to eat someone, so you don't want to think you're the same with what you're eating. Because you wouldn't feel nice about eating him or her or it. And you've been eaten many times, you don't like being eaten, you want to be separate from the devouring maw of something that's leaping at you. So you've learned to be separate. And you have deeply ingrained that you're different and separate. You don't want to embrace some sort of connectedness with them. And that's at the gut level. But as a human, you come to where you realize the futility, on the other hand, of struggling against the universe as a separate thing. Ultimate, temporary, maybe some relief here and there, moments of relief, but long-term futility. So you want to come to a deeper understanding about it. So if you jump into there, like on meditate, you're going to intensify your self-identity absolutization. It's like the person who practices only one-pointed thought-suppressing meditation or thought-disassociating meditation, which you do. You consciously go in, you disassociate from your thoughts. In a way, you're making yourself a borderline being because you're no longer thinking kind of practically about anything, because you don't listen to any of your thinking. That's why people who go on some kind of a long retreat, where they only do that, they become a little bit like lobotomized. They have to be guided not to walk in the one-way street. They have to be guided to stay on the right-hand side of the road. They need protection. And there are, therefore, monastic institutions where they get protection, or retreat centers or things where they get protection during the time where they've taken apart that thing. But the problem is that has not helped them take apart that instinctual, what the deconstructionists would call, or Derrida would call logocentrism, the self-presence as an absolute indubitable thing. I am here, I am me. They are being here now without any further thought about it, and that here-nowness of them is an absolute. And therefore, as here now as they are, when a lion leaps on them, they're going to kill that lion immediately. And that's going to be an absolutely righteous thing to do. Because springing from this sense of absolute themness is the absoluteness of their life pulse as opposed to the hungry lions. And they're not going to tolerate any kind of, or the lion is an extreme case, maybe nobody should tolerate a lion eating them. But, even someone saying a cross word to them or something, after they come out of their meditation, they might not tolerate it. How many are the gurus we've already seen in America, and many there were in Asia, who came out of a long retreat and demanded a Rolls Royce or a Cadillac, or sent subservient disciples and founded a cult and demanded worship for their megalomania, because that sense of self was not dislodged. And then they meditated upon it, and they even disarmed their critical thinking apparatus, so they just all they have is that sense of self, in a sense. And even some will combine that sense of self with having confronted an absolute nothingness, and that's the worst kind. That's the most difficult kind. They say the nihilist by experience is totally unreachable. That's the one who's totally poisoned by a misunderstanding of voidness. Right? So when Nagarjuna said Buddha was averse sometimes to teaching easily to anyone, it's because he was afraid people would become nihilists. But that's why I'm not averse. That's my excuse anyway. Because we're all nihilists already in this culture. We all don't think we have a future life. We all don't think we came from another life. We all think it's just our brain. We've been taught that's what's real. We don't think of that as a religious belief, but it is actually. It's a scientific belief, if you will, but it's a belief. It's a theory, it's a dogma. It's not a proven scientific conclusion. No way has anybody yet proven the existence of nothingness of your mind. And in principle, no one ever could discover that you're going to be nothing after death. Impossible. Simplistically impossible. Because no one will ever discover nothing. Right? No one will ever get a Nobel Prize for discovering nothing. If they did, that prize would be worthless.